Welcome back, everybody, to Behind the Caution Tape for the second episode of this show. I'm your host, CrashLit. It was a big week for USC, so let's get into it. Let's start off with a big fight on to all the USC teams that went out there and did the Trojan family proud. Before we start, I apologize if my voice sounds a little dry and raspy. Kind of lost a bit last night at the LSU game in Vegas. I'm back now in LA. I'll get in that shortly and let's quickly run through the agenda of what we plan to cover in today's show. So we'll start off with some cross-country action, then we'll move to women's cross-country, then we'll move into women's soccer. From there, we'll talk about men's water polo debut, and then we'll get to the sports that I actually had a chance to make it to this week, which were women's volleyball and then football, and then that will be our episode. So let's dive straight in and get to women's cross-country. Women's cross-country team taking part in the Waves Invitational in Malibu, being hosted by Pepperdine. And they came in third. So definitely solid performance in the 7-team event. Cal Poly would go on to win. Long Beach State took second, USC third, Pepperdine fourth, LMU fifth, CSUN sixth, and Cal State Bakersfield came in seventh. So that was pretty much the Waves Invitational. Trojans clocking in a team total time of 1 hour, 9 minutes, 22 seconds. This was also part of a big weekend where women's volleyball also happened to be at Pepperdine for a weekend series. And as I mentioned the week before, women's soccer had a match at Pepperdine. So kind of Pepperdine was the USC hotspot this over the past couple of weekends. But overall, definitely that's how the women's cross-country season started. Not a bad start, but they'll definitely look to improve on that finish. Improve in their next event when they head to the Arizona Dave Murray Invitational. That'll be in Tucson. And that will be happening at the end of the month, September 28th. So cross country will be off and training for a while. So we'll check back in with them as they get closer. From there, we'll now transition to women's soccer, who beat Portland 2-1 up in Portland, Oregon. Trojans starting the season still now in the back half of their non-conference slate, all road games as we talked about last week. They won 2-1 against the Pilots with Kayla Colbert getting a big goal, and Maylee Hayes also getting a goal. So 2 big goals and a PK by Hayes in the second half, putting the Trojans up for good. Even the Portland goal late in the game by Haley still could not get the Pilots back in it. So definitely another big win for the Trojans here. They are now 3-0-1 on the season after opening with a draw against New Mexico State. They now head up to the Bay Area this upcoming week for a match Thursday night against University of San Francisco for facing a former Pac-12 rival in the Stanford Cardinal up in Palo Alto. That should be a very good match. These two teams having a lot of history. Last year, the two teams drew an even 0-0. So played to a scoreless draw at McAllister Field here in LA. So Trojans got to host that one, but could not get the win. Stanford currently starting the year red hot. They are 5-0. So it's definitely going to be very interesting to see how they play here. And I think it should be a very competitive match, especially with, Trojans down Big Ten, Stanford now in the ACC following the collapse of the Pac-12. So that's kind of your soccer story of what's coming up there. Now we'll move in and preview men's water polo. So the men's water polo team starting their season off this upcoming Saturday. They will be taking part in the Triton Invitational hosted by UC San Diego. So they'll be heading down to La Jolla, California, and they have 4 matches. So 2 doubleheaders. On the Saturday at 12 p.m., they'll face Long Beach State. And then later that night, 6:30 p.m., they got a match with Cal State Fullerton. And then from there, the next day at 2:30, they'll face UC Davis, and then they'll close out the tournament with a 6:30 matchup against Westcliff. So I think these are all 4 pretty winnable matches. Trojans looking for obviously going to be, big national title contenders this year, as they always are. Most of the MPSF or, former Pac-12 schools of USC, UCLA, Stanford, and Cal are always really the ones competing for those titles. And I think it'll definitely be very competitive, really good matchups for sure. That'll help get the Trojans, kind of just start off the season right with some wins. Trojans made it to the semifinals last year. They're definitely looking to try to get past that and hoist the trophy this year. That's for sure. And then they'll return home the following weekend for their opening matchup, for their first home matchups of the season, when they'll face the UCI Anteaters on September 14th. So I'm definitely going to try to make it to that one. And so we'll see how it all works out. And now let's turn to the sports that I actually had a chance to attend this week. So on Friday and Saturday, I was in Malibu at Firestone Fieldhouse to watch the USC women's volleyball team take on the Pepperdine Waves for a set of 2 matches. Trojans swept the Waves on Friday before dropping the first set on Saturday in the rematch and then winning the next 3. Last 2 in a bit more dominant fashion. But overall, it was a very competitive match. Fan environment was really great. It was great to see a lot of USC parents show up. Pepperdine had a good turnout, especially on the first night. Second night, the turnout wasn't as big. And overall, I think the first match was probably a bit more enjoyable, but they're both really fun to be at. I covered practice, actually. But the one thing I didn't like was that kind of felt like the Pepperdine student section leaders were being a little inconsiderate of some of the fans just standing up and trying to block when they're trying to distract USC. I get they're trying to do that, but felt a little inconsiderate. I feel like some other USC parents and fans felt the same way. But overall, it's fun to be at. Know a lot of people at Pepperdine from my volleyball days at Balboa. Shout out Balboa. Let's go. Balboa forever. But great to see a lot of people I know on both nights, especially in that volleyball world. A lot of guys that I'm really close with. But yeah, so overall, that was super fun to be at. And the Trojans played really well. And the thing that mainly struck me about this team was that they were a much more balanced team. Like the hitting attack was way more balanced. And that was kind of the impression I got. I covered volleyball practice on Wednesday for an assignment for Annenberg Media. And the main thing I saw from both the scrimmage there and just in the matches was it was a much more balanced attack. Whereas in past years, Trojans relied heavily on Skylar Fields. What I think this year is different is you're just seeing so many more players step up in these matches. And I think that's what's helping this team do very well as they get closer, as they get into more competitive play, especially, and they're going to need a much more balanced attack once they get to Big Ten play. So these matchups now are kind of big, crucial tune-ups, and I think that was what was good about these Pepperdine matchups. And I think you saw, obviously, in the with these matchups against Pepperdine, Trojans were much more balanced. Skylar Fields has graduated, so it's obviously going to be missed by many, missed by all fans. But I think what's been great about this team is they're much more balanced. Allie Batenhorst, who has Big Ten experience, came in, had 2 big hitting nights against the Waves, but then also London Weejay, who should be still a freshman, but is already now in her sophomore year after choosing to forego her senior year of high school to enroll at USC a year early. Really has shown a ton of improvement from last year, and just saw her go off, which I think was great to see. Plus, you saw on the opposite side, Adanya Famuina did a great job on the outside, as did Jaden Livings. So I think that's what you saw. You saw just Mia Tuaniga, the setter, was able to just really spread the ball around, and it made it so that way Pepperdine had to work for their points. And really the only time they were getting points was if the Trojans made either an obvious mistake or made the obvious play, like hit it right to the libero or hit it right into a block, something like that. Pepperdine was obviously going to get and probably win the point, which is what happened a lot. But overall, I think I was very, very impressed with how just they were making they were, putting the ball away, putting in, the spots that help you win points. They weren't just, giving it right to the libero and allowing Pepperdine to convert. I also want to give a shout out to freshman Favor Anyan Wu, who made her USC debut on Friday and had two very excellent matches that had me very, very impressed. I think she could be a big, obviously. And I think she could have is going to be a very big contributor. Totaled 18 kills on the weekend, 5 blocks. So I think she's going to be a very important part of this team. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how this team has. I think head coach Brad Keller's put together really an excellent squad that does a great job just making teams work. Everyone just doing what they need to do to be good. And I think you also saw just not only that, it was also impressive to see how how the teams did on the defensive side. Obviously, Gala Trubant continuing to be a nightmare for opposing offenses in the patrolling the back court, but also another player who stepped up big time on Saturday was junior libero Megan Verbeest. Verbeest had 15 digs on Saturday that really just made it very tough for Pepperdine and were crucial in helping the Trojans win, especially after they dropped that first set. A set that they could have won, but just they started out a little slow. And sure, Pepperdine, I think, was clearly stewing on the loss the night before. So after USC found some rhythm, it was clear they took over and got a solid 3-1 win. But overall, impressive weekend for the Trojans. And they will now be taking part in the Creighton Classic on Thursday and Friday, where they'll be facing number 11 Creighton in a match with against the Blue Jays. Blue Jays are 3-0 on the year. Then they'll also face before facing Kansas State, who started the season off 1-2. I think Trojans are going to be able to take care of Kansas State, but I think that Creighton match is definitely going to be a battle. Trojans have proven, I think, that they can play with anyone and that they're going to be a very dangerous team. Creighton obviously is very good, but I think the Trojans have a big chance, especially if they keep playing like the way they did with everyone from Batenhorst, Weejay, Famuina, Jaden Livings also got to play a little bit on Saturday. Gala Trubant, Megan Verbeest, everyone steps up. This team is going to be hard to mess with. And I think their ranking is going to keep soaring. They started the season ranked 21st, moved up spot to 20th, but I think they're far from done. And I think it's going to be definitely a tough trip. You're going far from home, but after this, you're going to spend the rest of your non-conference slate at home, and you'll actually have your official home opener. And I think that was definitely the other thing that was nice about playing Pepperdine in Malibu is you started the season relatively close to home, which allowed fans to go. I won't be going to Nebraska. I won't be going to Omaha for this, but I wish the team the best of luck, and I think they're going to do a great job there. So looking forward to cheering them back on when they return home on September 11th for a rematch with Pitt, who is the team responsible for knocking them out of the NCAA tournament. And for now, let's turn to USC football, who kicked off the season yesterday in the Modelo Vegas Kickoff Classic versus LSU in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium. So pretty much, I went to both those Pepperdine games, and as soon as they were over, Sunday morning, I got in my car and I drove up to Vegas. Yep, I did that. And it was a really, really fun experience. I really enjoyed it. I thought it's cool to be at. I think Allegiant Stadium is great. As a Chargers fan, I hate to give the Raiders credit for stuff, but I'll give them credit where credit's due. They have a killer stadium. And I think that was just a great matchup. A lot of USC fans showed up, but so did a lot of LSU fans. And I've heard that those SEC fans, especially LSU, the Alabamas, LSUs, Georgias, their fans are known for showing up. So it's clearly created a very hostile environment, but I think USC responded well. And Miller Moss, how about that? Miller Moss going 27 for 36 with 378 passing yards and helped the Trojans go win 27-20 over the LSU Tigers, and a battle that really everyone was billing as kind of two very similar teams in kind of how they've played and performed over the last 2 years. And I think Miller Moss kind of has proven that. I think he's earned that starting spot. I know I've like kind of praised and been impressed with what Jaden Maeva has been doing ever since he arrived in LA last season after transferring from UNLV. But I think Miller Moss has shut down any questions that he's the guy, he's the quarterback, and he played like it. And obviously other players and I think the other thing that impressed me today or yesterday was USC's receiving. Kyron Hudson had 2 insane catches that were crucial. And I think also the defense looked better. Obviously still needs a lot of work. I thought the run game defense was pretty good. It stopped LSU for the most part, but definitely there still needs to be some work done on the defense. So it's definitely obviously a big win for USC to start the season. And I think it's going to help give them a huge boost now heading into Utah State, especially as they head into it. But before we get to that, obviously I'd like to, give a big shout out to Woody Marks, running back who transferred from Mississippi State, who got into the end zone for that winning touchdown with about 8 seconds left. That was just absolutely insane. Made every USC fan just go insane. It was absolutely an electric environment. One of my favorite games. And I was so stressed during it. But just when that happened, and then also Mason Cobb coming through with the intercepting Garrett Nussmeier. Hope I said that right. Right there at the end, and Miller Moss taking a knee and throwing the ball up. It was just, I was like, how about that? Like, couldn't believe we did it, but it was so much fun. I'm so glad I made it up and then drove back this morning. And of course, that's why, like, if you're wondering why you haven't seen an episode of Behind the Caution Tape uploaded yet today, it's because I was working my way home from Vegas and then, had to make sure, get everything set up, do my research, make sure everything was good and then prepared. But yeah, that was pretty much a busy weekend. And I think obviously the Trojans have a lot of work to do. Running game definitely needs some work. Yeah, you saw, the run game start to come together in the second half, but obviously kind of at times they were just getting stuffed, made it so Moss had to throw. And I think he did a good job hitting his targets, but overall it definitely made it trickier. As for the defense, obviously I'm very happy with Danton Lynn's debut as the USC defensive coordinator. The staff obviously put in a lot of work over the summer. You're starting to see it all come to fruition, but the Trojans definitely still have some work to, especially on the passing game. They did allow Nussmeier to throw for 304 yards, and he also threw 2 touchdowns. And so it's definitely going to be a lot of learning to do, obviously. And obviously Trojans are far from a finished product, but I think this game against Utah State is going to be a good tune-up game. USC, though, cannot get ahead of itself, though. Sure, you got a bye week after this, and then you go head to Ann Arbor, and I get it. It's easy to just be like, look ahead and just go to Utah. Just look over this Utah State game and be like, all right, we got these guys. The truth is, you got to be able to just take care of business, do your job every week. Utah State 1-0 after beating Robert Morris in Ogden on Saturday. So Trojans definitely looking to get that second win, but I think they can do it for sure. And I think Miller Moss, obviously rightly so, earning that Big Ten Player of the Week for his performance, and definitely just, I ought to give it to him. Like, I thought this would be more of a quarterback battle week in and week out, but I think he's earned it, I think. So I was very, very impressed with all of it. And I think it's definitely got this Big Ten era started off in the right direction for the Trojans, which is really exciting. I mean, I'm still, getting used to it. I think a lot of people are, but I think it's definitely going to be a fun season for sure, especially when we got Michigan, going to the big house in Michigan, and then, Wisconsin, Penn State, Rutgers, Nebraska, all coming through, and of course, finishing the season with Notre Dame. So Trojans, obviously, got to keep things going. I will be at that game against Utah State in the Coliseum. So make sure to come say hi to me. Obviously, when you if you get a chance, that game starts. Kickoff is at 8 p.m. It's definitely a late kickoff, and it will be the Trojans' debut on the Big Ten Network, which is kind of exciting given all the hype around just the Big Ten in general. And I think it's very exciting. But yeah, that's pretty much all that we got for you today. Thanks again for tuning in and sharing part of your day. Make sure to follow me on all platforms at CrashLit to see kind of the latest of what I'm up to, where I'll be this week. Really, this week, kind of a quiet week, given only really just this home event. I think the first home event of the USC sports calendar this year, this Utah State game at the Coliseum. So I'll be there. And one other thing I actually want to bring up to you before we go, and I think about it, is some of you, I've told a few people that since I got here, I've started keeping track of my win-loss record year after year. So far, with for every game I attend in person. So if I watch on TV, that doesn't count. Only in-person stuff does. And so far, I am 3-0 after the 2 wins at Pepperdine and the win in Vegas against LSU. And that puts me at 3-0 on the season. Overall, since I got to USC, I have an overall record of 215-82. So looking to keep that going strong, especially as I approach my 300th ever USC sporting event pretty quickly. Within probably the next 2 weeks, I think I'll hit it. But yeah, so definitely going to be an exciting week for sure. And I can't wait for it all to go down. Definitely we'll have more for you next week, especially as there's more stuff at home. Overall, looking forward to seeing how the Coliseum is, especially after that big win. A lot of fans I talked to were super excited. Definitely got the season started on the right foot. So thank you again for tuning in to Behind the Caution Tape. We will see you next week. I'm your host, CrashLit, and fight on.